सर स्टार्ट करिए कि
Yes, please, Ajay, yes, you can start.
Hello and good morning to all of you. Today we have with us Dr. Ellen Patnaik sir again, and the topic of today is robust design. Sir will also discuss optimization techniques again today. So as we know, sir is serving in BITS Mesra as an associate professor in the Department of Production and Industrial Engineering, and also serving as the associate dean of PG studies. So welcome, sir.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm audible to all of you. So let me share the slides to begin the presentation.
Yes.
Okay, can you see the slides?
Yes, sir. We can
Okay.
see.
Thank you. So good morning, all the participants and friends. So today, as you know, we'll discuss about this particular topic, that is on robust design. I hope it will be interesting. Reason being, it is a tool which is considered to be very useful for researchers. You might have some experience on this tool, of course, I can assume. So what exactly is the robust design and how to apply that to a particular problem of a product design or process design or system design, that we'll discuss. Of course, okay, let me show you the kind of outline of my presentation. So these topics I have planned for the 1 hour or so. We'll first talk about the concept of Taguchi's robust design. Then what is the basis of this design of experiments? We'll discuss something related to orthogonal arrays and things like that. Then we'll take up a small example kind of case study from robust design, and I will illustrate that how to solve it using Minitab software. Then, of course, at the end, I have a small discussion on this RSM methodology, which I again found to be very useful for researchers, or maybe the kind of problems you may be dealing, looking at the theme of your FDP. I mean, it's related to some material development. So usually in that kind of research domain, we are finding many applications of RSM. Perhaps someone's mic is on, so it is creating some sound. Can you check? Okay, Mr. Kiran, please unmute. Mr. Kiran Gowda, can you unmute yourself? It's creating some buzzing sound.
Participants, please mute yourselves.
All right, so we'll continue with that. So these are the outlines. I'll discuss some numerical examples in between and how to solve them using Minitab. So let us begin. First of all, we have to see what is this robust design, which is the main topic of our talk today. So the term robust itself means that how to design your process or your product to make it insensitive to the noises. That makes it robust. So what are the noises? Noises are the factors which we do not have the control over. It can be like temperature, humidity, or any that sort of factor which you don't have direct control. So if you look at this figure, this explains about how a robust design framework is developed. So maybe at the center of your consideration is your product or the process or a system that you are designing. It is having some effects from controllable factors which you can control, you can increase or decrease. And it is giving some responses, right? It can be one response or more than one response. So it is giving some response for which you are interested in, some kind of performance measurements. At the same time, you can see it is also subjected to some noise factors. As I said, it can be some external noise factors when the product is in use and you don't have the control over, like the temperature, etc. So the main concept of Taguchi's robust design is that how you can design your product or process by using your controllable factors so that it will be least affected by the noise factor. So as you can understand, it's quite useful for any product or any process that you are designing. So the approach that Taguchi suggested is also very interesting and logical, that we have to conduct some experiments by using these controllable as well as noise factors, and we will vary these noise factors to see the effect of those noise factors on the output, that is on the response. At the same time, see, as you don't have any control over noise which is external, so we'll find from that experiments or from the maybe analysis of that results from the experiment that what level or what settings of these controllable factors are making this system robust. Means it is becoming least affected by the noise. So this is the basis of the robust design concept. So you'll find many applications in product and processes if we'll explore a bit. So this slide actually first defines what is Taguchi's robust design. I already explained it. So it is makes it minimally sensitive to factors causing the variability, of course, at the minimum cost. So it is a class of design of experiment where uncontrollable noise factors are considered to find the optimal levels of each controllable factor to reduce the harmful effects of noises. Right? So that is what I said. So we have to find the best optimal levels of the controllable factors, right? Because you don't have control on noise, but we'll make it robust. So in other words, the process or product or the system becomes robust or insensitive to noises that causes the unwanted variation. So this is the concept of robust design. Something continues here. The noises we cannot eliminate, right? The atmospheric pressure, the temperature, or the humidity, we don't have control over that. That's why they are called noises. So the noise factors during this experiment. So what we are doing purposely, we'll vary these noises just to see that how the controllable factors are getting affected by the noises. So again, intentionally, we'll change the noise factors with various levels, and we'll see what is the effect of that during this robust design procedure. All right. So you can find a term called S/N ratio during this robust design process, because as you know, if you read the history of Taguchi, Genichi Taguchi is basically an electrical engineer. Of course, he also studied in ISI Bangalore. Anyway, so he has used this S/N ratio concept, which is particularly from electrical engineering, to represent this effect of noises on the controllable factors. Anyway, we should not bother about to what is the source of S/N, but in fact, we should bother about for the kind of response or output, what kind of S/N ratio we should select, right? Because we usually face with mainly three types of responses that we are interested. Again, it is related to optimization. So when our response we want to maximize, so that comes under a category called larger the better, right? Larger the better means we want to maximize the response. So it can be something like strength or hardness, means you want to maximize that. Similarly, there can be some responses which are of the smaller the better type. It may be something like which is having some detrimental effects. So it may be related with some friction, which are some undesirable things. So you want to minimize that. So in that case, we'll select smaller the better kind of S/N ratio. And third one, there are some situations where we want to achieve one target value. For example, 30 volts, yeah, 50 amperes. You know the target value for that process or output. You are not bothered about maximization or minimization. Rather, you want to achieve the target value. In that case, we'll select the third one, which is called the nominal the best, right? So it will try to get that value because that is the target value. So there are three situations for which you will use the S by N ratio accordingly. So, but for the maximization and minimization objectives, the experimental, so this is a kind of prerequisite you should also take care that if your response are larger the better and smaller the better kind of response, then the experimental or observed data must be positive, right? You cannot have, negative or zero value for that case. In that case, this robust design process will not work. Means it is a kind of limitation. So it has to be positive. Whereas you can have any value like positive, negative, or even zero for the nominal, the best situation in the robust design. So this slide is done. So let us see next. Okay, some examples. If you are introduced to this robust design for the first time, then maybe some examples will make it more clear. Suppose there is a manufacturer company which is producing some chocolates, caramel candy, and the company found that there's a response or the property or performance that is called chewability for the candy is under consideration, under study. Right, they want to have the best chewability for the consumers for that particular chocolate, and see, they may have many controllable factors, maybe the composition, the percentage of sugar or coke or any other thing that they are using in that. But what happens ultimately, the product is subjected to some noises, means it is subjected to temperature outside, humidity outside, so that chewability property getting affected, right? Because of noises. Then ultimately when the customer, maybe they are dispatching the product to various climatic conditions, countries. So depending on that, the chocolate may not be showing a kind of robust property. It's not robust. Maybe in hot countries, it is becoming very soft and so on. So if this is a problem, then how this robust design approach can help the designer or the manufacturer? You can see here. This is a small figure here. The x-axis shows the temperature, y-axis shows the plasticity, which is in fact that chewability. So there must be a target value. You can see a horizontal line which marks the target value. So if the chocolate or the caramel candy is having that target value throughout its lifetime, right, shelf life, so it is best for the customer or the consumer, right? But it is very hard, very difficult to provide that. It's not possible because there will be some effect of noises, of temperature or any other external factors, noise factor. So here you can see the curve A1. A1 indicates a very large variability in the plasticity. And because of increase in the temperature, the plasticity or the chewability varies a lot, as you can see in the curve A1. That is before applying the robust design applications. So maybe the product will face a lot of problems. It will melt in the shelf, or the consumer will not be satisfied. So that is the A1. Now, it can be claimed that if proper robust design is applied to this particular process or this product design or its composition, etc., then maybe you can reach a stage like A2, that is after the improvement, right? So obviously you can see the A2 is much better than A1. There will be some effect of noise, but it has become less sensitive to the noises, and that in fact makes it robust. So this is an example. It can be extended to any other situation where you want to achieve some kind of target, you want to reduce the variability in the response, so it can be done. Okay, suppose in this case of this chocolate, suppose there are over 10 ingredients were mixed to produce the caramel. So different mixing ratios would yield different properties of the resulting product. That is the chewability. So after experimentation, the plasticity of the new candy was much more stable relative to ambient temperature changes as seen in the figure. So that is what I explained, that if we can find the right mix of its composition, which makes it robust, so naturally it will be a better product. But the question is how to find it, and that is in fact the theme of our today's talk. So how to find the best combination of this composition which will make the product robust. So as I said, you can find your own problems. There are plenty of problems of product or process design around you, or maybe in your research area, and it is quite applicable. You will not find much difficulty if little bit exposure to some software like Minitab, anyone can apply it. It's a very useful, design approach. All right. So, yes, this is another example again, but this is the first example from which the Taguchi started its robust design approach. It is related to some tile company which was sick. You may read the history. And what exactly he did, that there is a variation of the temperature of that furnace or the kiln, because of which the product was having variability. It's depending on the temperature of the kiln, the output product used to show its response or product properties. So it is somewhat like a noise factor. You cannot have a full control over the kiln temperature. That's why he tried to study that what other way is there to make the product more robust. So from this, it started that how to find what are the composition of the tiles that they make. So maybe some composition, percentage of clay or something like that, they changed. And then they found that the product now coming out from the kiln is more robust, right? So this is the best, the first experiment, I will say, based on which the Taguchi's robust design concept was developed. Okay, so let us move ahead. Again, what exactly the robust design tries to achieve? What is the goal of robust design? So to come up with a combination of design parameters, the controllable factors that I said is the researcher is having a control over are nothing but the design parameters, like maybe percentage of material composition and things like that, which you can vary. You have the control. So what combination of these design parameter values will give you the functional objective, and so whatever response or objective that product or process is intended or designed to give for, that is fulfilled or not. Of course, there is a primary requirement. The second one is important. The response of the design is least sensitive to any possible combination of noise factors. That in fact is the uniqueness of robust design, that it tells us that what levels of these input controllable factors you should use in your product or process so that it becomes less sensitive to the external factors on which you do not have direct control. Okay, so if you want to find the solution for this, that can be a brute force method. Brute force method means you don't know what is robust design, Taguchi's robust design, and you just want to conduct all the experiments. So that is somewhat like a brute force method. So what you can do for each possible combination of design parameters, right? So suppose for your controllable factors, you have decided 2 levels for each, 3 levels for each. So there will be many combinations of the various levels of the factors. And so you go on conducting all the experiments, go on conducting all the possible experiments, right? And at the same time, go and vary all the possible levels of the noise. Again, in the noise also, we have to use levels, right? So the temperature is high or temperature is low, or even if you have more detailed analysis you want, you can make 3 levels or 4 levels, right? Low, medium, high, right? So it all depends on the kind of rigorosity you want from your analysis, but you can begin with 2 levels at the initial stage. So you can conduct all the possible experiments, right? As you know, the combination of all these possible experiments will be huge, right? If you are dealing with 4 or 5 factors, then the number of experiments will increase. And if you have some experience of experimental research, then you know how difficult it is to conduct a particular set of experiments, right? You all have the experience. There are many difficulties which come in. So if I'll tell you that you repeat this experiment 64 times to complete all the possible settings, right? Then you know it is not advisable. Maybe somewhere in between you will maybe abandon your research and you will think that I will do something else, not research. So this kind of frustrations happens during experimental work. So the robust design approach or the design of experiment approach in general actually solves this kind of problem where you need not have to conduct all the experiments, right? But the results the results or the output that you get out of the some fractional experiment also serves the purpose. That is the thing, right? You need not have to worry that instead of 64, I conducted only 32 or 16 experiments. So whether it will be valid or not, no. There is a strong statistical background behind that that will protect you. No, what you have done, if you have used it properly, means using the correct, concepts of design of experiments, then it serves the purpose because it makes use of a property of orthogonality, which is again rooted in statistics, which reduces the number of experiments. Again, the credit goes to people like Taguchi and someone, a researcher called Fisher. Based on him, the Fisher test or F test has been named. Okay, so it is already there and they are standardized. You can easily select a kind of design of experiment, or we call it orthogonal arrays, right? So the thing is that no need to go for the brute force method or to conduct all the experiment until and unless it is within your control. Suppose full factorial is only 16 experiments, maybe you can go for full factorial because that also gives a sort of assurance that I have conducted all the possible experiments. So otherwise, there is means, and that means is design of experiments. So as you can see here, how to reduce the number of experiments? That is the question, right? And that is the need statement for the design of experiments. So while starting your experiments for any research work, right? Before that, you need to give some time on these things. Without any planning, if you are starting the experiments, then later on you cannot add on. I have seen many, usually students at UGPG level, they just start the experiment. After that, while writing the dissertation, they will say, "Sir, I will add design of experiments here." Many people do like that. But conceptually, it is a blunder. One cannot have a design of experiment after conducting the experiments. So, as you know, this is some pre-plan. This is some pre-plan. Then according to the design of experiment or the orthogonal array, you have to set your parameter settings. Then you can start your experiment. So that will make it, correct. So how to reduce the number of experiments is the question. Okay, so then comes this slide, which is about the design of experiment. So as I said, suppose you are dealing with 5 factors for your problem, and initially you are taking only 2 levels, then there will be 2 to the power 5, that is 32 possible combinations of experiments that you can conduct. Again, conducting 32 experiments on some machine tool or maybe some other process is not advisable because it will consume a lot of time, effort, and cost. So here comes the design of experiment or the kind of orthogonal array or the Latin square L, which helps you to reduce the number of experiments and get the same kind of analysis or results out of that. For example, which factors are significant, right? What interactions are important for you? Then what levels are important for you to avoid the noise? All the things that you want out of your experiment that you can get out of this. So that is the selection of something called orthogonal array, right? So some of the paragraphs you can see here. This is an immensely helpful statistical tool, okay? Based on Taguchi's contribution, it can substantially reduce the experimental efforts, cost, and time. All right. So DOE is useful in designing, conducting, and analyzing the experiments with the minimum resources. Okay, that is also taken. Now, instead of 32, you cannot say that, no, I will conduct experiments of my own and I am comfortable with 5 experiments. So it's not permitted. There is a standard orthogonal arrays that you have to use. So either you have to go half fractional, 16 experiments or 8 experiments or 4 experiments, right? You cannot select the number of experiments as per your, will. So conducting all the 32 experiments is also possible, and it also happens, and that is called full factorial, right? Others are fractional factorial, FF. So the selection of a fractional factorial experiment plan is facilitated by using Taguchi's proposed method. So Taguchi has proposed orthogonal arrays, and it has standard arrays. I can see you can find it at the end of any statistical book as appendices, or you can find it on any source which deals with statistics. All the software, they will automatically generate the orthogonal arrays. All the statistical software like Minitab, SPSS. So you need not have to worry about what is the orthogonal array for that kind. But yes, you need to spare some time to understand that which orthogonal array is suitable for you, right? Anyway, there are, if you are using some software also, like Minitab, there are a lot of facilities of maybe assistants which will tell you that how many factors you are having, how many levels you are trying to consider. So they will suggest what kind of orthogonal array is suitable for you. Otherwise, if you want to have some theoretical background, then you can go through there are many books on robust design and quality engineering. So that will give you a good idea about your selection of orthogonal array. But theoretically, you should know there is something called the degrees of freedom. Let me see the next slide. I think. Yes. Yes, degree of freedom is important. So degree of freedom is something of your experiment. You have to find what is the total degree of freedom of your experiment, right? It depends on the number of factors you are considering, number of levels for the factors you are considering, and number of interactions you are interested in. Interaction means a kind of combined effect. Suppose temperature and pressure are two separate factors. What is the combined effect of temperature and pressure? That is called interaction in the language of this. So from there, we'll find the total degree of freedom of your experiment. And you have to select the orthogonal array. Each and every orthogonal array is also having its degree of freedom, right? So you have to select an orthogonal array which will be at least equal or more than the degree of freedom of your experiment. So that is very simple, as I said. Anyway, if you are using software, you may not have to again bother about degree of freedom. It is already, programmed in your software and it will be selected for you. So hence, initially the experiments are conducted at more probable factors. Okay, so this is a kind of guideline that once you are starting some experiments to know the various factors and their effects on the response in the design of experiment, it is better to start with as much factors as possible. Suppose you are not sure that which factors are significant, but you just want to keep them. So better to keep it at the beginning, right? Because you may sort them out, you may, discard them out in the later stage, but at the beginning you can keep maximum number of factors, but keep the levels minimum to 2, right? Don't increase the number of levels at the beginning, otherwise it will increase the number of, degree of freedom, and so also your number of experiments, because you have to select a orthogonal array of larger size, and that indicates more number of experiments. So the guideline is that begin with more number of factors with lower levels, right? Then once you identified the factors which are not contributing or significantly affecting the response through your ANOVA analysis, or maybe through your design of experiment itself will tell you that which factors are contributing. So then you can discard them, right? Then the rest of the factors, when you make sure that these factors are really affecting the response, then you can increase their levels to mostly 3 or 4, depending on your need. So that is the concept about the degree of freedom. Okay, so the levels are, if you are using a 3 level, so the degree of factor becomes 1 less than that. So that becomes 2. And in the interactions, the degree of freedoms get multiplied. So these are some basic theories behind it. All right, so here, yes, for example, an experiment comprises of 3 main factors, let us say A, B, C, and you are considering 3 levels. So there are possible interactions that researcher is interested is A cross B, B cross C, means all the possible interactions, even A, B, C. So then the total degree of freedom of this experiment becomes 26, right? Because you have to add, you have to sum up all the individual degree of freedom. For example, for individual factors, it becomes 2 plus 2 plus 2, because there are 3 levels. So as I said, for a factor, the degree of freedom becomes 1 less than the number of levels. So 2 plus 2 plus 2, then A cross B is 2 into 2, B cross C is again 2. Likewise, it will go on multiplying and adding, you will find it coming out to be 26. So you need to have some orthogonal array right? And again, there is a classification that the orthogonal arrays are based on the number of levels, right? So there is a set of orthogonal arrays which are for 2-level experiments, and there are some which are for 3 levels. So as it is a 3 level, so you can have options like L9, L18, L27. L stands for the Latin square wave, and it has some notation. It has some meaning also. You can explore the number itself shows that the number of experiments, how many factors are there, how many levels that can be taken. So all these there are, in that notation. So here you will select out of these 3 options, the L27. The reason is that the degree of freedom of the orthogonal array is 1 less than the number of trials in it. So for an L27, the number of experiments that you have to conduct is 26, 1 less than that. And here, fortunately, your degree of freedom and this orthogonal array are matching. But even if it is not matching, you have to take the next higher level, right? Next higher level. So hence the L27 array, whose degree of freedom is 26, can be used for this experiment. Now some illustrative example I will discuss, and based on which we will also discuss the robust design. So listen to me carefully, how you can apply, and this problem is it looks very much similar to the kind of maybe things you have discussed in this FDP. It is related to some development of novel adhesive compound, right, a material. So you can, I think, easily relate upon this. So Mr. S, working at a material research laboratory, is a scientist experimenting on a novel adhesive compound. The strength of the bonding is the response, while 4 factors are considered as controllable factors affecting the bonding strength. So you remember that figure I saw. So it is a product you are developing, and there are 4 factors which are controllable. So initially all the 4 factors are taken, each at 2 levels, for identifying the most significant factors or their interactions to further experiment at 3-4 levels. As I said, you have to begin with 2 levels, and thereafter, if you can discard some factors which are not important, then you can increase the number of levels. So the 4 factors are like this. The first factor is composition. So the researcher is having 2 composition for the analysis. One is the composition A and the composition B. We are not going into detail of percentage and all that, just a composition. So there are 2 different compositions. Temperature. Temperature is another factor which it's not a kind of noise factor, remember. It is a temperature which is controllable, right? The researcher can vary the temperature to 2 levels, 230, 270 during the product development. Maybe during the process, temperature is provided. Then some stirring is provided maybe to that preparation of adhesive compound. So its RPM is considered as another factor, controllable. So low 130, high 200. Again, the time for the solidification is also at 2 levels. So these are the 4 factors which you want to judge or include in your analysis of DOE, and you have a single response, that is the bonding strength. How these factors are affecting the bonding strength of your final product. This being an experiment of 4 factors at 2 levels, so there are full factorial 2 to the power 4, 16 experiments if you can conduct, then all combinations are covered. So it is advised to conduct full factorial. Yes, this is also another guideline that if possible, try to conduct full factorial at the beginning. So if possible, right? So this is a Minitab application. I'm showing you the steps. Hope you can have the Minitab software. So the very easy process of applying this. So you have to select stat tab, then DOE is there, then factorial, then create factorial design inside that. So there you have to select the type of design. You have to select the level of factorial. It is a 2 level. So number of factors are 4. Then you have to select full factorial. If you will not select full factorial, then you will have options like number of experiments 8 or 4 like that. Then you have to hit OK. So this is the kind of some screenshot that will get. Let me explain it. Of course, this is the output that will get. So here you can see this is the data window. As you can see, this is the C1 is the standard order, right? This is the number of rounds. Then this is center. It is by default 1, and block is 1 in this case. Now these columns, the material, temperature, stirring, and solidification. So these are generated by the software based on the orthogonal array. Of course, it's not orthogonal array, it is full factorial, but you'll see all the possible combinations will be mentioned. For example, your run number 1, you have to conduct the experiment. Once you have designed all these things, then you can go for your process to your experimental setup. Then you set temperature at 230, stirring at 130 rpm, solidify for 20 minutes, then find, okay, use the material composition of B, then do the experiment, then find the product, right? Then check its adhesive strength, right? After finding the adhesive strength, suppose come out to be 106 units, then that experiment is over. Similarly, you have to repeat all the 16 experiments and you can find all these last columns, you can kill them. It is the strength, right? This strength column, you have to fill one after the other after conducting the corresponding experiment by using that corresponding set of parameters, setting of parameters. So in the left hand side, you can see a graph called Pareto chart of the effects graph. It is very useful graphical tool which will tell you that which factor is really affecting or significantly affecting the response the most. So there is a red line you can see. All the blue blocks which it intersect indicates those are the important or significant factors. But in this case, based on this data, it is found that the A plus D, it is an interaction effect, A is the material and D is the solidification. So the interaction of material and solidification comes out to be the most important significant factor. Here one thing we must understand that of course in this normal plot also you will find AD is remotely placed, right? It is outlier. So what is kind of judgment you can make out of this? So here we found that AD is significantly affecting the response, but that was not our purpose. We wanted to find which factors are affecting, right? In fact, in terms of degree of importance, it is first the factors which comes into consideration. Then comes 2-degree interaction like AD, then comes 3-degree like A, B, C, likewise you can proceed. So here the method says that if you are finding such a situation when an interaction is important, right? It's not that A and D are individually important. You cannot claim that also. So there are some means that you can remove the interaction effects from the analysis. You can only keep the factors. Then you do the same testing, ANOVA test. You'll find which factors are important. So that way you can judge that whether all the 4 factors are important or not. Because as I said, in terms of degree, in terms of significance, the highest importance is given to main factors like A, B, C, D, followed by 2-factor interactions like A, B, C, B, C, then 3-factor interactions. Hence, in this case, for this case, the analyst must judiciously keep or remove any factor and interaction using terms in italics, means in the software you'll find selection of terms to arrive at a proper regression equation connecting the independent variables with the dependent response. So it is up to the user that which terms to keep or to delete. Means interactions you are interested, you can keep it or you can delete it, right? All the possible interactions you can keep or you can delete during the selection. So here, as you find AD is important, so that does not mean that A and D are individually important. So that conclusion cannot be made. So to illustrate, okay, now based on this problem, the same problem, now I'm starting the robust design approach, right? I'm not starting the robust design approach, that if this is the case, right, there are 4 factors we have discussed and there is a single output or response. How to know the best levels of these? Now we have assumed that all the 4 factors are significant. We need not have to discard one, right? So that discussion is over. We are assuming all the 4 factors are to be kept in the analysis because they are significant. Now if these are the 4 factors, then how to find the best levels of these factors so that the product, that is the adhesive that you are developing, will be robust and insensitive to the external noise factors. So that discussion now starts. So we'll in fact illustrate how this same problem is addressed using the Taguchi's robust design using Minitab. So as you can see here, the same experimental data of adhesive bond strength for robust optimization is taken. I am just checking, am I audible to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. So now, again, there is a very small, steps are there to arrive at Taguchi design. So again, start from start tab, then go to DOE, then Taguchi, then define, of course, version to version, these steps may be a little bit changed, but maybe this is Minitab 13 or 17, I don't remember. But anyway, that hardly makes any sense. So you can easily get it. So you have to design the custom design the Taguchi problem for this. So there are two ways. If you have already got data entered in this, then there is one approach. Or if you are starting from scratch, means you are not doing the ANOVA analysis at the beginning, directly you are going to the Taguchi design. Then also you can directly start from this one. Go to start, DOE, Taguchi, and define custom data. So, okay. Now this slide I want to explain, and I hope you will be able to understand it. What this problem is, this slide is showing here. This is a screenshot where you can see that all the four controllable factors, right? They are at the beginning, right? C1, C2, C4, and they are having some settings. Settings 1, 1, all the ones are there, twos are there. So as you know, we have used, let us say, 2 levels for these 4 factors, right? We have used 2 levels for these 4 factors, and we want to change the noise, as I said, purposely or intentionally for this experiment, and we are trying to see what is the effect of the noise on the response. So look at this table carefully. So what I have shown here is that from C5 to C8 column, I have marked like N11, N12, N stands for your noise. Let us assume that we are finding this particular adhesive product is subjected to, let us say, 2 noise factors. There are 2 noise factors. Maybe one is temperature, ambient temperature, and the other is something like humidity, right? Humidity and temperature are the 2 noises which you want to see. What is the effect of these 2 noises on the bond strength, right? So what we are doing, we are either doing the full experiment, full factorial if you have time and resource. Otherwise, you can go for factorial. So you can conduct 8 experiments. Perhaps here it is showing 8 experiments only. So if it is 8 experiment, then you have to select according to that. It is half fractional. So according to that, this 1, 2, these figures will come up automatically in the software, right? You need not have to fill it. So the first 4 columns, these 1, 2s, software will provide, and that in fact is the orthogonal array, right? So there you can find there is a particular pattern. There is a particular pattern among all these figures that you are seeing, and that gives you the orthogonal properties. So you need not have to worry whether these 8 experiments will be enough or not. It will be enough. So what you have to do now? Now you are ready to conduct the experiments by varying the noise factors. For example, look at the column C5. In C5, you have mentioned N11, means noise 11. As I said, for your noise, for example, temperature and humidity. So you will set a level. You will set a level that this is the low level of temperature and this is the low level of humidity, right? So somehow you have to subject the material to that kind of noise levels of low, and keeping the controllable factors all at level 1. As you can see, row number 1 is all 1, and even noise is also 1, 1. Right? So you keep all the controllable factors at level 1, it's the lowest level, and the noise, 2 noises are also at the level 1, and conduct the experiment. Right? Conduct the experiment. Then the product is subjected to the testing, its bond strength, and suppose you found 106 units as its bond strength. So mention it. Right? Similarly, you have to proceed with by varying the noise factors. Again, suppose N12, which is in C6. That means you have made the first noise at first level and the humidity at the highest level. That's why it is 2. Then you conduct experiment. So all possible combinations of the noises you can do here. Right? Suppose you want to subject the product to all possible combinations of for your noise factors, you can do that. So theoretically, it is called the outer array, and the first one is called the inner array. If you are reading from some book, quality engineering book, this referred as inner array, the controllable factors, and the noise factors are marked as outer array. Again in the outer array also you can make use of factorials, right? No need to conduct all the experiments. As here I have marked it is full factorial also. I have subjected the product to all possible combinations, but you can reduce the experiments by making factorial application there also. So the outer array can also be a fractional. So whatever the case may be, you have to select, you have to find the experimental values, and all these values like 106, 134, they are all your hard work, right? They are all your hard work, because for each setting you have to conduct the experiment and to get the value, then you can mention it. So once all these values are obtained, means all your experiments are completed, then again you can conduct the robust design calculation, analysis. So yes, these are the outputs that you will see in the menu tab. As you can see here, because it's not that clear, but you can see here, analyze Taguchi design tab is there, and there you can select, see response data. In the response data, you have to select all the 4 columns. You have 4 columns like N112, N22. So you have to select all those experimental data will be considered as response data, right? It's not a single data. Then depending on the nature of your response, as I said, you can have larger the better, or smaller the better, or the nominal is the best. So that thing will be taken here. As you can see in the right hand side figure, signal to noise ratio, you are asked which property you want. Means if it is larger the better, you want to have the maximum strength for the bond, so you will select that. That's it. So once you make all these things and okay, so you will get the results or the output like this. Okay, so this is the output that will find finally. It will not talk about the noises, but it will talk about the main effects plots of your this one controllable factors. So from this data which is there on the top table, and the plots, main effect plots and S by N ratio plots, you will able to understand that what is the level of these controllable factors which makes this particular product robust to these noise factors. Only that much you will be able to understand. So how you will be able to understand? You can see the interpretation of that. The slide is just before it. Yes. The main effects plots for the means and SN ratio, along with the calculated SN ratios and rankings, are produced. Right, in the next slide I have just shown. Now to interpret the results, the main factor temperature graphically shows the largest effect on mean and SN ratio plots. So just refer to the figure. Look at the plot for the temperature, right? Temperature, the second one. The temperature seems to have the highest effect on the response, that is the bonding strength. And remember, this is not noise temperature, it is the temperature of your controllable factors. So this is having the highest effect on the variability of the response. In fact, why I am saying highest? Because it is measured from the slope of the line, in fact. So you can see the slope of this line is the steepest one among all these 4, right? If it is more horizontal, means parallel to that dotted line which is there at the mean value, that indicates that factor does not have any effect, right? If it is more parallel to that line, and if it is more steeper, when slope is more, that indicates it is having a higher effect on the this one, on the response. Okay. What else you can find here? Okay, based on the SN ratio delta value, there is something called delta value. It also calculated by the software for you. It is nothing but the difference between the maximum and the minimum. It also gives you the ranks, so which one is the most important, which one the second, and like that. The first rank is for the temperature. So as you can see here in the data table, you can see the value of delta here, right? Just above the rank, there is a delta. So you can find 0.78 is the highest of all these delta values. That's why it is rank 1. So temperature is rank 1, material is rank 2, stirring is rank 3, and solidification is rank 4. And the same thing graphically also you can judge, right? It's nothing different. You can find the highest slope is for temperature, next is for material, next is for stirring, and the solidification seems to be parallel to the that dotted line, means it is minimal affecting the response. Okay, so this is about the factors which are affecting the response. We have not talked about the level of factors which makes it robust. So that comes in the next analysis. So last paragraph of this slide you can see, and that is the main output or main result that you can find from this robust design analysis. The rankings indicate the degree of significant effects of the factors on the response. Okay. Further, the SN ratio also helps in deciding the optimum level. See, what is the SN ratio? We have just today discussed that SN ratio is talking about your signal to noise ratio. There is already noise, right? So the SN value that is calculated by the software and made a plot of this, that gives you an idea that what level of these control factors are best applicable to minimize the effects of noise. So that's why the SN ratio or the SN values are helped. That plot of SN ratio gives us an idea that which level is best. At which the response that the bond strength is maximum. The parametric combination. Now this is the final summary of this analysis. The parametric combination of material level 1, temperature level 2, stirring level 1, solidification level 1, where their SN ratios are maximum, is identified as the optimum level. So easily you can look at this plot also. This is SN ratio plot, main effect. You can easily look at this plot and you can tell that which level of these controllable factors is best suitable for the robust design. For example, take the case of material. In case of material, suppose this is A and B, you can see in the axis below. So material A, which is having the highest SN ratio, is suitable to address the noise factor. Suppose you want to have a robust product, then go with material composition A, not B, because B is having a lower value than the mean. So first level, that is the A in this case, because the first one is materials, it's not any numerical value, but it is just categorization. So these are two materials are there. So material A is best suitable to address noise problem. Similarly, coming to the noise, which are numerical value, you can find if you are producing at 270 degree, that is the second level, the SN ratio is highest, right? So better to use the higher level of temperature during the processing of the adhesive. If you want to make it insensitive to the two noise factors we have considered. Similarly, for stirring, you can take the first level, that is 130. And for solidification, also you can take the first level. So these are the, that's why it is called parametric optimization. Like these are the parameters, right? You just want to find which levels, right? Of course, thereafter you may be interested to conduct a 3-level experiment, right? 3-level. So if you will conduct a 3-level, maybe some of your experiment numbers will increase. You have to repeat some of the experiments, right? So, but if you will take 3 levels, maybe the middle one may be better. You never know. So you cannot predict that. If for temperature 270 is better, you cannot claim that 290 will be also better. You cannot claim, right? No one can claim. It depends on many things. It can only be ascertained through experiments. Suppose you made temperature 3 levels, maybe 270 again will give the best value, and 290 the value will be less. It may also happen. So you can increase the number of levels for this if you want to make it more fine-tuned, means in terms of its parametric design. So this way, you can, in the robust design actually, to summarize, what exactly you are doing, you are finding the control levels and at what level the control levels are best suitable for the minimization of the effects of the noise factor. And I hope this topic we should end here in the robots design discussion, right? Then the next one in my plan is about response surface methodology, right? Again, this is also a very statistically interesting experiment which is used for optimization of some response or some output when you have several input variables. In fact, it is much useful in the case when you have many number of input variables. So it is usually started from research in chemical engineering, but it has now pervaded into all the fields of process and product design. So response surface methodology is used for that purpose. Okay, so when the researcher wants to optimize one or more dependent variables, you can have multiple responses also. Of course, I have some example for multiple response that I will show you at the end. Be it a single dependent variable or multiple, you can handle it, which are influenced by several independent variables by careful design of experiment. Here also, we are trying to reduce the number of experiments, right, to get that kind of equation, which of course what I found this RSM is very closely related with your multivariate regression analysis. They are very close, means conceptually, but here we are reducing the number of experiments. Of course, if you are going for some multivariate regression analysis, you need a lot of data to get one equation which will justify it. But when you are conducting RSM, maybe with fewer experiments, assuming that experiments are difficult, so you are getting the same effect by making use of the same property of statistics, which helps us, the researchers, called the orthogonality. So here you are reducing the number of experiments and arriving at some response surface if it is not linear. Then by varying the variable settings, you are just trying to find that what is the best response for a particular combination of your input variables, right? So it is mostly used to refine models after the important factors were identified using factorial design. Okay, so this is I think it's a different example that we'll use for this RSM problem. Then here is another research scholar is planning to conduct experiments for a research work in which 4 factors are involved. The response is expressed as the ultimate strength of the test material. 2 levels are considered for each factors. As there are 4 factors, so total there is 2 to the power 4. That is 16 experiments has to be conducted at the beginning. And the factors are A, B, C, D, and it is like this: percentage of tungsten, it is having 2 levels also, vanadium, time of quenching, heat treatment temperature. So just an example sake. So there are 4 factors at 2 levels. Now to apply the RSM, again, see, I am illustrating how it can be used in the Minitab, right? Again, I will tell you honestly, to apply RSM, you need to have two main approaches, right? One is a theoretical background on the RSM is necessary before blindly jumping into some software-based implementation. And to understand RSM clearly, you need substantial time. That is what I can predict. But anyway, if you understand the RSM theory to some extent, that definitely help you in the implementation in the software, because RSM contains some tricky questions regarding the kind of model that you use. So there are 2 possible models which are used, like CCD and BBD. Then there are things like blocking. Blocking is also used for when you have data from different sources, right? You have conducted experiments, but there is some variation because the operator has changed or there is small change in the material supplier, so you will block them. So there are some concepts like this which makes the RSM bit tricky compared to the kind of discussions we just had for ANOVA or the ROS design, of course. So for RSM, you need to have some theoretical understanding before applying your data for using some software. Or if you are blindly using software, using all the default values, maybe that can also give you a satisfactory result. But to be more sure, you need to have some theoretical background that I can tell you honestly at this stage. So suppose assuming that we are using all the default things, we don't have any special issues like we want to block it or we will use BBD. So by default, CCD is mostly used, like the composite design is mostly used. So assuming that, so what you can do, then selecting CCD, and you can by default check one block, and alpha value is also there, root over 4, that is 2. So the factors in this case, as you know, there are 4 factors the researcher is considering at 2 levels, and there is a bond strength as the response. So the factors are included. You have to add all the factors. There will be windows which will ask you to add all the factors and their possible levels and values. Then after entering all that, then you can have a column at the end, which is the strength. And again, you have to experiment to get the strength. The last column, as you can see in this slide, that is C8, is the strength. And this column you have to fill after each and every experiment. But at what setting you will do the experiment, that you can find here. Suppose you have to keep the tungsten at 4%, vanadium at 0.5, quench time 0.5, and temperature 1150. So with this setting, you have to conduct the experiment and write the value. Just you did in the other case we have discussed. So after filling all this data, then before optimizing, you can there is something called response optimizer tab in the mini tab again I'm doing. So you can do some more statistical analysis if you are interested, right? You can find what are the effects of these factors as we have discussed in the previous thing. Then you can find the Pareto chart, that dotted line, that will give you a fair idea about which factors are important, which interactions are important, on all that thing. So if you are simply interested in the RSM, right, then yes. No, this is for your basic information regarding the significance of the factors and all that. So as you can see, the Pareto diagram and that. Okay, now this is related to your response optimizer. So now coming to, if you are interested in the RSM only, so now coming back to stat DOE and response surface in mini tab, strength you have to select as the response in the analyze the response surface design command, along with the selection of desirable graphs. There are many graphs that will be asked, right? Like surface plot, wire plot. So you have to select whichever you are interested. And you have to select the terms also. Terms means the interactions like A cross B, B cross C, which interactions you are interested to plot in those graphs. So you will have plots among the coordinate axis of these plots, means you are interested. According to that, you will select the terms. Then you have the contour or the surface plots that will be selected, and you can find 2 figures here for the same problem, I guess. Yes, the strength is in the output response on the y-axis, and this tungsten and temperature are on the 2x and y-axis. Sorry, strength on the vertical z-axis, and tungsten and temperature and x and y-axis. So all the possible, whatever you have selected, it will just show you, right? All possible combinations of parameters in axis. So quench, temperature, tungsten temperature, right? All possible. And the surface plot, in fact, is showing you the non-linear variation of the strength, right? According to the variation in these input parameters, right? Whichever combination of input and the output you want to, graphically see or present, that you can generate, right? But as you can see in this surface plot, right? Suppose you want to maximize. Your problem is a maximization problem. Then there may be a point on this surface which gives you the maximum value, right? So your problem is to find that point. If you can find that point, that means you are going to optimize. It is a simple optimization of your response, right? So what is that input which will give you the maximum value of that output? There is again a graphical means to find it. Okay, so in order to find the optimal settings for the 4 factors which will maximize the response, that is the strength, you can use something called response optimizer. That response optimizer will be there, so you can use that. So it will graphically help you that you can just slide the inputs. I'll show you that figure, and by sliding all the variables, you can reach at the value which gives you the maximum possible response. The response strength is selected from available to selected. The setup helps in entering the nature of optimization problem. Okay, so when you are going for response optimizer in the Minitab, it will ask you for some data, like what is the response you are selecting. Again, in the setup, you can set what is the maximum and minimum value, or if you have any target value that you can set, or you can select some weights, and you can give different weightages, I mean importance, right? Starting from 0.1 to 10. So high weights give higher priority to the target values set in the search, and high importance gives a higher priority to that response in the case of, okay, so these are more useful for multiple response problems, right? Suppose you have more than one response, as maybe we used to have, there is strength is there is maybe hardness is there is something else is there. So when we have multiple response, then also we can use the same process, and in that case you can set priority or importance, which response you are more giving more importance or priority. According to that, it will simulate. So in this example, the strength is to be maximized and importance can be taken as 1 because there is only one response, so the importance is 1. So maybe you can set a target, I mean a boundary, a limit, that is a lower value of 2000 and target value of 2600. You can also enter before the simulation is entered for this maximization problem. Both weight and importance are taken as 1. Okay, so this is a figure. I hope you are able to see. This is the figure at the bottom of this slide, which helps the user to just vary these vertical lines. These red lines can be slided, right? By using your mouse, you can slide. When you are getting the output, you can easily slide that, right? No need to rerun the program. Once this output is there, you can vary it, slide the red lines. So when you slide the red lines, right, you will find all the calculations will be changed according to that. So the maximum strength, so by default, it will show you a maximum strength, right? But it is up to the user, right? You can make changes also. You can see, suppose you are not practically comfortable with that level of input. So you can slightly make a difference in that. So you can see what will be the output, what will be the strength at that time, right? So this way. So what is the limitation? I will say limitation is that it is not exactly giving you the values which is maximizing it, the parameter. Of course it is giving, but at the same time you have the scope of changing the input variable settings and see, because in fact it is just represented from a response surface equation. There is a non-linear equation which is behind this. It is just graphically representing that. And when you are sliding this red line, it is nothing but you are changing the values of XYZ. So this way, this gives you a kind of optimization, and it optimizes your response. Okay, now next is, I think, multiple response. Suppose you have multiple response. So this slide is written that suppose you have more than one response. Suppose in this example, we have added cost and yield. Cost has to be minimized and yield has to be maximized, and already there is one strength which has to be maximized. So this become a multi-response optimization. Right. So what is the process? It will be slightly different because the data for the two responses are added to two columns of the Minitab. If you remember, I told you, you enter the experimental result for the strength. Now instead of one, we'll have 3 columns. We'll add 2 more columns, and again from the experiment, we'll add the data for cost as well as yield. The rest of the process remains same. Okay, somewhere in between, it will ask for whether it is maximization or minimization. There also you have to select accordingly that cost you want to minimize and the other two you want to maximize. So once you have done it, so it will tell you, I mean, again, the same thing, upper and lower target values. You have to give the weights and importance, right, to the different priorities, I mean, objective functions, whether cost is important to you or yield is important to you. According to that, you can give value from 0 to 1. Then you will get the optimization plot as you have received in the single objective optimization. The researcher may now, this is called interactively vary. What I told you that you can slide the red line and you can see what is the effect of that change on the response. That is called interactively vary. Right? The user can interactively vary the factor levels in the optimization plot, and that figure is called the optimization plot for a sensitive analysis. In data sensitive analysis, you are just seeing by changing these input factors values how sensitive it is to your response. Suppose a particular factor which is not that much significant, if you are making a lot of change in that, it will hardly affect the response compared to some other which is highly sensitive. So these things you may not get using the kind of optimization I discussed in the previous lecture. There the approach is different. There you are finding what is the optimum value and at what input factors it is possible. But it is something extra. It is something more. So this multi-objective optimization, which is handled through RSM, has got you kind of interactively you can change. It is more practical, I will say, because those who are applying the thing on practice, they may be more interested to know the practicality of that. Suppose a variable is there, they will check it is not possible to have this value. Let us see if we are reducing or increasing this one, what is the effect of this one? Instead of going directly by the exact optimum values from some optimization tools. So this RSM can be more useful in practice. That's why many researchers, you will find many papers in recent time, maybe from the last 15, 20 years, the RSM has been widely used in the product development, material research, and all these areas. So that's why it is a sort of giving you the optimal solution, understanding all the practical trade-offs. That is what I explained, practical trade-off. Practical trade-off means that thing. Because as a user, you may be knowing instead of blindly selecting some input variable level or value, you can see what are the practically possible value and how much it is affecting the response. So you can slide those bars, right? These red vertical lines for each of these factors, right? And you can look at the left-hand side figure, that is the maximum strength. So it will vary. Right. So you can set a suitable value which is comfortable for your experiment or your process. Then you can proceed. So this is about RSM. Okay, this thing we have discussed. Yes. So this is the plot you will get if you have multiple objectives. You may have like strength, cost, and hardness. Right. So each is having its. So see, it is very interesting. Once you will slide this red line, all these optimum values which are on the left hand side will vary simultaneously, right? So you can check what is the best setting of the, for example, percentage tungsten. Suppose you want to minimize it because it is becoming very costly to you. So when you are minimizing it, you can see what is the effect of that on strength, on cost, on hardness, right? So that's why it is called by makes it interactive with you, right? Okay. Okay, finally, there is another approach which is also a very recent time being used by many people, which I found to mention here. There is a means of combining all these responses. For example, there are three responses we just discussed. Instead of comparing all the three responses simultaneously, there is a means of combining all these responses into a single one that is using a gray relation analysis or using relational grades. So there is a process, of course. I think no software has incorporated GRA in them. At least Minitab and SPSS have not included. Maybe in future they will include it. But yes, if you can do manual calculation, right, you can convert your three objectives into a single one. Then you can make use of single. Instead of three objectives, you can use that gray relational grade as a kind of combination of all the objective functions, right? So I think I may not have much on this. Yes. Now I'll have some queries from you.
Any questions from the audience? Audience from for sir? Sir is open to questionnaire now. So if anybody wants to ask something, please unmute yourself and ask. Or you can chat. You can also chat. Type in the chat box.
Okay, let me ask you something. As you are not putting any questions, have you understood all these things I have explained?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that is the purpose. In fact, you may not ask questions, but you have understood the kind of things I explained, and I hope that it will be useful if you are doing some kind of experimental research. The tools that I have discussed today will be useful, and in the previous lecture, the kind of things I discussed will be applicable to both experimental works as well as industrial engineering works also. So, if you have any questions, please go ahead. So it is a nice experience for me, and I'll take this opportunity to thank Dr. Misra.
Sir, there are some questions.
Yes, please read it.
Shiva Raju sir tells, should I know the difference of gray relational analysis and desirability approach?
Desirability approach. In fact, I don't have much idea about the desirability approach you are talking about, but I think it is pretty similar, right? Because in gray relational analysis also, no, they are completely different. They are completely different. I don't have any idea about the desirability approach you are talking.
Any more questions? I think we don't have any questions, sir. So thank you so much for giving your valuable time to us, sir. We are very grateful. And
Thank
hope
you
to
so
see
much.
you soon again.
Thank you so much. I also take this opportunity to thank the organizers, particularly Dr. Misra and her team, and BSUT, for which I have very high esteem and regards, as I belongs to state of Odisha. So as you can
Thank you, sir. Thank
understand.
you so much.
So all the best for all your programs, and I wish all the participants a great time, a great research experience, and successful career. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So participants, will start our next session at 11:30. So please stay with us.